Monday night's Charleston City Council meeting is expected to be one of the biggest this year as they tackle short-term rentals once again. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down with Councilman Harry Griffin one-on-one. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. Councilman Griffin, it is so good to see you again.
It's good to see you too, Quintin. Congratulations on being honored on the 28th Charleston County Republican Party Black History Month. I know you're not affiliated. Just wanted to say congratulations. It's always good to honor a great Charlestonian like yourself.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be honored, and I'm happy to talk on both sides about a lot of issues going on in Charleston.
We have a lot, don't we?
Yes, indeed. And you talk about those issues. Let me go to you guys at the City of Charleston.
Sure. This
is the headline from the Charleston City paper. New short-term rental rules up for first public hearing in City Council Monday night. So what do you want to hear from the public?
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing from the residents. I'm looking forward to hear from the homeowners and also the people in real estate. And I'm very interested to hear from my colleagues. Some of the big issues that surround short-term rentals is you have the 4% versus 6% argument. You get 4% if it's your primary residence. 6% would be more of an investment. How do you police that? With the 4%, both the short-term rental task force and the planning commission said that equals you can short-term rent your house out for 72 days.
Right.
That's not continuously, because a short-term rental would be 30 days or less. That's how we define it. That's going to be very important. That's really the big difference between the short-term rental task force and the planning commission too. Short-term rental task force attached a number in the hundreds for a 6% in terms of how long you could rent it out per year. The planning commission said we don't want 6%ers to be able to short-term rent them. It's also important to note that in West Ashley and James Island and the Northern Peninsula, you cannot legally short-term rent your house out right now. Now you could go on Airbnb
Right.
or Craigslist and you'll see lots of short-term rentals. Right. They're being done illegally. So it's very important for us to address the issue of how are we going to police this? Because it's not being policed now. How are we going to make sure that this process is implemented and done correctly? And what are the punishments going to be? We have some kind of vague punishments now, but they don't happen. So how are we going to police this? If we can police it, and we'll implement something. It'll be up to myself and my colleagues to decide whether we want to go the route of the short-term rental task force or the planning commission. And as you saw last week with West Ashley Revitalization, we implemented the West Ashley Revitalization Commission's plan instead of the planning commission.
And you know, when I talked on the phone with a current Charleston City Council member and a colleague of yours, he basically says, hey, my constituents don't want short-term rentals in his particular district.
Well, it's a tough issue when you start looking at the suburban character of West Ashley or James Island. I mean, you move out to those areas, you start raising a family. They're long-term answers. I told you, I think the first time I ever met you, right. I told you that Shadow Moss is a place where you get to Shadow Moss and you never want to leave.
Right.
But how is that character going to change if you have, 20-year-old kids coming in every other weekend? Because 72 days means you could rent your house out every single weekend of the year. So you could have a different person staying next to you every single weekend in West Ashley. Not something that a lot of people would like to see, but we have to find a way to, like I said, police it, because it's not being policed, and we have to think of a right way to do this, because one of the other issues that a lot of people that I've talked to on the peninsula would be upset with is you start renting your house out short-term rental. Right now you can't, but we passed an ordinance and you can start doing so. How much traffic is that going to increase in terms of, are you going to have a cleaning service come in and clean your house a couple of times a week if you're renting it out? Are you going to have a service come in and bring food to your house for your short-term rentals? How much extra traffic is that going to produce? And that's something that we have to look at.
And as you know, obviously, the public is talking a whole lot about this. And a lot of people are asking, where is the public poll on this big issue?
I mean, right now, we don't really have a public pulse on this because we haven't really talked about it in council. There's been some op-eds in the Post-Courier. There's been some pieces in the city paper.
Right.
There's been a lot of social media about it, but really, the reason why we have a public hearing is so we can really get the public's perspective, take all of their opinions into our decision making. That is what our country was founded on, democracy,
Right.
and having the people's opinion and their voice heard. So Monday night, now we're at the Dock Street. We're
Right.
not at City Hall.
Right.
5 o'clock Monday night at Dock Street
Church Street.
is a chance to really come out and have your voice heard, whether you are for 4%, or whether you want to see 4 and 6, whether you like short-term rental task force, whether you like planning commission, whether you don't like any of it. How are we going to police it? Bring your opinions, and we need to have a vast perspective on this. It's a very big decision for Charleston.
And you talk a lot about West Ashley in the previous answer. Let me go to the Post and Courier headline just recently. It says this: Charleston City Council could chart new course for West Ashley's future this week. Obviously, you guys came up with a plan about that. Talk to me more about it.
I saw that headline, and we were getting a bunch of emails about, oh, well, Sam Rittenberg's going to be the new King Street, and it's that's a little too big there. I think that really wasn't the proper way to put it, and I think that a lot of people are confused. I want to set the record straight. We adopted an amended plan on the 13th.
Right.
We adopted the West Ashley Revitalization Commission's 45-page plan, not the 350-page plan that Dover Cole put out. We adopted the chapter highlights and the conclusion. We did not adopt any of the meat inside. The reason for that was we are a legislative body.
Right.
The Revitalization Commission and the Planning Commission are not.
Right.
We need to be able to make decisions, and we need to be able to vote on things and then not have to go back and worry that we might have contradicted ourselves because we have a 350-page plan that is going to be so dense that we're constantly going to have to be checking ourselves. We're not going to be able to legislate. That 50-page plan that was implemented, and we're going to have a second reading on that on Monday night. That plan is still pretty dense. I mean, you talk about 50 pages
Right.
is still a very good, solid document, but it allows us to lead. It doesn't. It's not going to put 10,000 apartment units on Sam Rittenberg, and it's not going to be the dictionary definition of new urbanism or anything like that. We're not going to go in and take people's homes from them. We need to have a basis plan that is going to lead us for the next 30 years. And that West Ashley Revitalization Commission, they've met every month for over a year and dissected that document. And I watched the drafts and how it evolved. And it's in good shape. We're going to make it better. But we're adopting a plan that is not going to tie us down and is not going to sink us in terms of making big decisions for the next 30 years.
From West Ashley to Johns Island, this other Post and Courier headline reads this: Johns Island moratorium looks dead, but concerns about development there remain very much alive. What concerns do you guys as a city still have?
Well, we, you heard the mayor said it at our last meeting that we're going to have basically a Johns Island Revitalization Commission. It's going to be very much like West Ashley. You're going to have many members. You're going to have county officials, city residents, engineers, the whole 9 yards. And that concept was first brought up at our February 13th meeting when we were going to have a first reading on a Johns Island moratorium. It was unanimously deferred. It's already been deferred before we even see it for tomorrow night, so it won't be on the agenda. However, the reason why it's being deferred, from what I've heard, the conversation I've had, is that we have a lot of ideas still being thrown around, and this Johns Island kind of revitalization commission is a great idea.
Okay.
Because we have infrastructure implementation that's there that we need to put into place. And we definitely need to get with engineers over there and the constituents and talk about their needs. But you can't just put a moratorium on something because of traffic. There has to be more of a need than that. Because let's be honest, we are having a traffic crisis all around the entire city. We have a lack of infrastructure in every part of Charleston. We can't just pause building altogether. A Johns Island moratorium would have been the third one third building moratorium in a calendar year, which is going to be tough for pro-business people. Number two, you can't say that the Johns Island moratorium, well, West Ashley and James Island got one, so we deserve one too. No, there was very specific needs for West Ashley and James Island. James Island had the Folly Road overlay that needed to be completed, and West Ashley, we put a building moratorium on the Church Creek Basin on the floodplain.
Right.
And we've had devastating flooding that has, FEMA's come in and bought houses, which, by the way, we're going to vote on the contract for FEMA and Bridgepoint on Monday night as well. As soon as we approve that contract, then FEMA can start negotiating the buyouts of those homes. There's, I think, 35 units that need to be bought by FEMA. So you look at all of this, just saying moratorium and screaming moratorium and voting yes and pausing building would be premature. We have a lot of projects that have already been in the pipeline and have been in the pipeline for a few years.
Right.
You can't just pause them when they're near completion. If we wanted to do a 6-month moratorium on applications to build, I'd be fine with that. We do some catch up. But you can't cut things off in the pipeline. You have to draw a line somewhere. And the projects that are already in the pipeline, they have to be completed. If we get this Johns Island commission together, it's going to lead to, I think, really great results, because you've already seen how great the West Side Revitalization came together and put an actual document in front of City Council that was just implemented, implemented as of tomorrow night once we pass second reading and pass ratification. But another important thing to remember about Johns Island is they have a ton of different committees over there. They've got the Johns Island Council and the Johns Island Homeowners Association. Those guys need to all come together and put a set of needs on one list and all get behind it and fight for that, unified as an island. That's what we did in West Ashley. We got a lot of people behind one very specific need, and we pushed it. When you have 8 or 9 different committees or commissions or councils, and that some want different things than others, it's hard to get a consensus of what the constituents really want.
You have been on Charleston City Council for a month and a half now. Describe you in one word as Councilman Harry Griffin.
Well, I think I'm going to be a bulldog in a lot of different ways. Bulldog to me is one, citadel, which means integrity, honor, duty, respect.
Right.
But also bulldogs are tough. I'm going to be tough for my people. I'm still concerned about the lack of funding being brought back to West Ashley. When we have projects that you can use TIF money for, that's what we need to do. We don't need to, every time that we have a project that you could apply TIF funding and we don't, we're taking away from West Ashley in one way, shape, or form. Because for West Ashley, we're having to pull out of the general fund a lot of times to pay for things in West Ashley. Because we don't have TIF districts in West Ashley. We have one. The peninsula has multiple. We have to be smart about our spending. We have to make sure that the projects that we do, we need to be looking at the budget for next year right now, not waiting until December. Because what happens when you wait, you scramble at the end and you don't fund things properly. I really like Councilman Seekings. He had an idea that we need to really have a budget committee that is focused on the budget all year round and talking about different budgetary projects. We need to get working on that now. We need to get working on funding for the Church Creek Basin, because we extended the moratorium till May, but I'm going to be embarrassed if at the end of this moratorium we don't have some implementation. So we need to get working on the funding for that. We need to get working on the funding for the West Ash revitalization. We can't just keep saying yes to projects and not knowing how to back it up. And we have to remember that with West Ashley, between 2010 and 2020, you're talking about approximately 10,000 more people. That has to be a priority. And that was my platform while I ran, one of them. And now it's time for me to really make sure that that's implemented. So we've got some strong West Ashley council members. Really, our council as a whole is a great council. I will say that. I've enjoyed working with everybody so far. It's definitely a different bunch than it was a year ago.
Right.
And so there's going to be a lot of differences and a lot of new decisions that are made. But we have a lot sometimes the media portrays us as being divided. I don't believe so. I really think that we're going to work together and get a lot done in 2018. 2019 is going to be an election year,
Right.
and then 2020 and 2021. I'm looking forward to that. But we have a strong council, and we've got some smart people in that room, and we're going to surround ourselves with even smarter people. We've got a Church Creek Basin Committee that's coming too.
Oh, wow.
That's going to be myself, Kevin Shealy, some
Right.
members of the cities,
Right.
and state officials,
Oh, good.
and some engineers, including Bob Horner.
Okay.
That's important because we need to have people that are focused to getting money and recommendation implementation for Church Creek Basin. That's important, and we're going to do it as a team. We have to make Charleston the best place it can possibly be.
Sure. Well, Councilman Harry Griffin, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
Thank you, Quintin.
Anytime. Thank you.